Kaulana nā pua o Hawaiian. Pupa'a mahope o ka aina. Iki mai.
Aloha Hawaii, and welcome to A Second Glance, where we take an in-depth look at issues in and around Hawaii. In an earlier program, I spoke of a forum that was conducted by the Waianae community in which we asked candidates whose names would be appearing on the 96792 ballots, on the zip code of the Waianae Nanakuli area ballots. These were candidates who were running for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, for the mayor, for the city council, representing the Waianae area, federal offices such as the House of Representatives and other general offices whose names would be appearing on the ballot. And the reason for this candidates forum was to present the candidates, introduce the candidates to our community, and this was in a primary elective process rather than a general election process. We chose the primary election process because many of the candidates who were running in the primary were not familiar with our people, and we thought it appropriate to give our audience an opportunity, or our voters an opportunity, to understand who these folks are who oftentimes did not get the media attention that other well-known, or what we might call professional politicians, may have had. So this was one purpose of doing this candidate forum for a primary race. The second purpose was that rather than conducting this forum as a debate in which the candidates come and they get into an argument with the other candidates, and what we look at is not really a discussion of the substantive issues, or when we hear the issues that are being presented, they are not really the issues that are important to the Waianae community. So what we decided to do was to pose questions to the candidates that were questions that came from the community, and have them respond to these questions. If you have had an opportunity to see some of these debates, I think you will understand more reasoning why we approached this candidates forum in that way. They should be showing on a little television in channel 53, or they may be switching the channels around, I'm not sure. Anyway, I wanted to discuss some of the questions that we posed to share with you what we wanted to share with the candidates, and also to impress upon you what are some of the questions that we are looking at that we consider to be important in the political, economic, social life of our community, of our society. In an earlier program, I talked about Hawaiian sovereignty. I talked about where do we go after the apology of 1993. They talk about, yes, we did commit an aggression, but with what result? I spoke about the Mandela bicycle story, in which one boy finally apologizes to the second, saying, I'm really sorry I stole your bicycle. I would like for you to accept my apology and forgive me for stealing your bicycle. The boy whose bicycle was stolen says, of course, you haven't apologized, I forgive you. So the theft boy, the thieving boy, stands up and walks away, and the first boy says, hey, by the way, where's my bicycle? An apology is not sufficient unless taken or the wrong committed is somehow remedied. In the case of the theft of the Hawaiian nation, where's the bicycle? Where's the nation? Where is our right to continue our nationhood? You know, let's not be so flippant about coming in and taking up people's nation away. And when you take that nation, you take their laws, you take their language, you take their culture, you take their economic system, you take all of those things that gives them an anchor not only to a place, but to who they are. And when you rip that away from them, when you change the educational system, when you control the media, the very method by which we communicate, you steal the soul of a people. How do you restore that? Or do you have an obligation to restore it? I think you do. I think you do. And rather than merely keeping those people who refuse to conform to the colonial laws that have since been brought in, how do you accommodate? How do you not criminalize such people for their adamancy, for standing up to their principle, as our queen would say, e onipa'akako, to stand firm? How do you accommodate for that firmness of belief? Merely by treating us as criminals? How do we begin to negotiate to find a space within our communities, within our society, where we are able to persist, to exist, to conduct ourselves as honorable individuals with historical obligations, with continuing obligations to our nation? Or are we to simply succumb to the strength, the power, the overreaching by the United States and forget principles, just give in? You know, at times we glorify the tenacity of the French underground during the Second World War, when the Germans came into France, took over the government, overran the nation, set up a false government, saying that this is a government we recognize now, a new puppet that had been created, saying that we will only negotiate with this government and you need to work with that government. Instead, what did the French underground do? And I forget the name, Charles de Gaulle, as one of the leaders of the underground movement. This is absolutely not. We maintain our French citizenship. We are loyal to the principle of nationalism, of being French. I'm not French, but I can recognize and respect the principle that they stood for. Why is it so difficult that the American government cannot recognize the principles that we stand for? Not merely as an Indian nation. We are not an Indian nation. We had been a nation of Hawaii, equal in stature as every other nation recognized in the international community. At the time, we had up to 99 diplomatic and consular posts around the world. We were a member of one of the first international union, the Universal Postal Union. Our head of state was the first head of state in the world to travel, to circumvent the world. And he was accepted in every court that he entered into. And of course, I'm speaking of King David Kalakaua. He was the first head of state to address the houses of Congress. So Hawaii was a well-established country, nation. We had treaties and executive agreements with the United States of America and almost every other nation that had existed in the world up to the time the Americans came in and invaded our country, contrary to our treaty, the Treaty of 1850, I think, a treaty of friendship, commerce, and navigation, in which there was a commitment there shall be perpetual peace and amity between Hawaii and the United States. But in 1893, the Americans landed their troops, overthrew our constitutional monarchy, and established a puppet government, later on signing with this puppet government to bring Hawaii into the United States, or to receive the stolen goods that they had created. They created a puppet government. They essentially gave them the power to now cede Hawaii to the United States. And so they call all the lands that they took ceded lands. all of the waters that were supposedly given to the United States by this puppet government, ceded waters, or they claim it's part of the whole ceded lands assets. And what they don't talk about is that they also gave to the United States the Hawaiian individual, the Hawaiian citizenship, which had been, or who had been converted, just like the lands and the waters of Hawaii, simply converted by a proclamation made by this puppet government. They passed a paper, of course, they called it the Constitution of the Republic of Hawaii, back in the 4th of July, 1894, using the event of a holiday that the United States had been celebrating. They then conducted a ceremony, refused to permit the Hawaiian people to vote on this document, and simply by declaration, Sanford Dole declared this to be your new constitution, and in doing so, declaring himself to be the president of this government, the Republic of Hawaii. So when they ceded all of these things, they gave not only the land and the waters of Hawaii, but they gave also the Hawaiian human being, claiming that they were automatically citizens of the Republic of Hawaii, and now they were automatically citizens of the United States of America. But the Hawaiian nationals never consented, never went along with this, never agreed to it, never signed, never voted to be part of the United States. And that continues to haunt both the state of Hawaii and the United States of America, in that what they are now claiming to be the lands, the territory, the jurisdiction, the citizens of the United States who are residents and had been residents of Hawaii that can trace their ancestry back to 1893. All of this are stolen goods. And yet the United States are not addressing how do we resolve that issue. What they did, however, was in 1993, 100 years after the invasion of Hawaii, they did confess to the theft. They did apologize, but they left it at that. So that one of the questions that we asked in this forum is, where to now? What do you propose? What do you suggest as the creation of a political, economic, social space for the Hawaiian nationals living in their own homelands? Or do we continue to criminalize them because they refuse to finance their own colonization, because they refuse to accede to the claimed jurisdiction of the foreigner, who on one hand confesses that their big boss in the earlier days stole all of these things, but now refuse to contend with the fact of such theft? So anyway, that was one of the questions that we had asked to read on some of the stuff that we had actually asked the candidates. There are people who refuse to acquiesce to U.S. sovereignty over Hawaii, believing there is no legitimate transfer of authority from the Hawaiian constitutional monarchy to the United States of America. This is reflected in the flying of the Hawaiian national flags, to refusing to register for the U.S. military draft, or to file income tax returns, or to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States, or to acknowledge loyalty in any form to the U.S. government. This raised consciousness of Hawaiian history, of international principles, of human rights and fundamental freedoms of conduct is now widespread in Hawaii. Yet those who stand for such principles are often treated as delinquents, or more normally, as criminals. We are not the criminals, we are evidence of the crime. And it is not us who created the crime, committed the crime, conducted ourselves in a criminal way. The finger, rather than being pointed at us, should be pointed at the one pointing that finger, and it is the government of the United States and the government of Hawaii. So how do we resolve this? Why is there no real public discussion about these issues? Another concern is, still staying on essentially the same subject, ceded lands or lands that had been stolen, subsequently transferred to the U.S. It continues to have this tainted title. Given the U.S. Apology Resolution, the state legislature's similar confession of U.S. aggression, and the overall historical record of U.S. participation in the overthrow, to what extent should the U.S. and the state of Hawaii sell, lease, or otherwise transfer any aspect of title to such lands without a final resolution of the question of Hawaiian title to such lands? Should there be a formation or alternative jurisdiction court for those who are accused of breaking laws but who concede no authority to the U.S. government, but who would be willing to stand before a court of their peers of the Hawaiian nation? We recognize the need for law and order. We recognize the need for some structure of government, some rules that we all should play by. But certainly it shouldn't be the laws of the thief. But how do we carry out this formation of creating these laws such that the country that had stolen our nation will respect those laws? And right now, from the candidates that we had spoken with, there seemed to be no room to work with. No willingness to admit that, yes, these are the facts, we need to address these facts, so let's go. Let's talk about how we can work with one another. One option I had suggested earlier was the completion of the Native Hawaiian Convention. Fund that process. There had been 87 delegates, now 78 delegates. Now, based on those who have passed away or unable to continue to serve, the numbers have dwindled. But we are always ready to fill those positions based on the rules of this convention. Let us complete that work. Put it out to the Native Hawaiian people. See what their opinions are. That is not going to finalize the question, because even after we put it out to the Native Hawaiian people, we recognize from that convention that if we are talking about an independent nation, it's not only the Native Hawaiian people who need to be given consideration, but it is the Hawaiian nationals, many of whom are not of the Native Hawaiian blood, but whose nationality are Hawaiians. Some people cannot understand this concept. And they say, well, come again, what do you mean? You can be a Hawaiian national, but you need not be of the Native Hawaiian blood? How can that be? And so what I suggest is that the listener should suspend their American racist mindset. And when I say American racist mindset, I'm not being accusatory. I'm trying to be descriptive. Because from the American approach, when we think about individuals, what is the first thing that you describe the individual with? You describe him by his race. His Caucasian, or his black, or African American, or his Puerto Rican, or his Chinese, or his Hawaiian as a Hawaiian race. And so we get caught up with a racial mindset without recognizing an individual by his nationality. So you can be a Frenchman, but you can also be an African whose citizenship is now in France. Canadian, you can be a Chinese of Chinese ancestry, but you are a Canadian citizen. And it's the same with the United States of America. You can be of any race. It's not a matter of race. It's a matter of national allegiance. So taking that basic principle, when you apply it to the United States of America, people will say, I understand now that what you're talking about is one's nationality or very similar to the question of citizenship, but we won't get into that because it's sort of confusing. But one's nationality is American, what we call American. Actually, formally, it's the nationality is the United States of America. But you need not be a European or a Haole. You need not be a Native American. Your nationality defines your loyalty and allegiance to that particular nation. Your ethnicity may be something else. So you have many different ethnicities who join into the United States of America as their nation. Well, it was the same with Hawaii. Why is it any different? For the Hawaiians, the Hawaiian nation, we could not have Haole citizens, Portuguese citizens, French citizens. They're still Haoles, right? Okay, let's move off of the Haoles, the Chinese citizens, Puerto Rican citizens, and many others. Those ethnicities also made up the Hawaiian public, the Hawaiian nationality. So when we talk about nationality, it's to be distinguished from race or ethnicity. It's to be distinguished from one's religion. It's to be distinguished from one's choice of language. One's nationality is where you reside or where you park your national allegiance, your identity, how you identify yourself. I think it was Filipino singer from Hawaii. He said, I grew up in Kalihi. And yes, I'm a Hawaiian. I grew up in Hawaii. That's how I identify myself. That's fine. As a nationality, you're absolutely correct. So, as we deal with the national question, we cannot be satisfied with just addressing the Native Hawaiians. But after we address the Native Hawaiians, because after all, the Native Hawaiians are really the first people, the host people, the foundation from which the culture comes from. So we address the Native Hawaiians. But we also need to incorporate, if we are talking about the creation or the recreation or the re-emergence of the Hawaiian nation, we need to address the non-Native Hawaiians as Hawaiian citizens. I hope I have clarified for you some of the more intricate questions that continue to bother many people in Hawaii, uncertain how to deal with that particular subject. Now, I note that I have just a few more minutes to continue, about 5 minutes more on this program, and I don't want to lose this valuable time. So another question that we had was this question of Italy, and looking at a case that occurred in Italy in which a very poor individual, homeless, no way of sustaining himself, no money. The song we have in Hawaii which would reflect that is, I guess, Manuela boy, my dear boy, no more 5 cents, no more house, go a alapak, here moi. Okay, so poor, you have no money, you have to go out and homeless essentially. So this individual walks into a store, and in order to get some sustenance, he steals a piece of sausage and a piece of cheese, worth about $3 to $4, walks out and is caught. They bring him in, they charge him, they put him to trial, they find him guilty, and they sentence him for 6 months in jail, and when he gets out, he is to pay approximately $500 to $600 as his fine. So the defendant appeals to the Supreme Court, to the Italian Supreme Court, and he says the fine was too onerous. The Italian Supreme Court comes in and reverses the finding. And what do they say? They say that a person who is under such condition cannot create or cannot commit a crime. He does not have the mental intent. He does not have the discretion. A person needs to eat. You cannot find that he has committed a crime. As I look at that case, and as I look at Hawaii's history, we had a law that was called Ke Kanawai Mamalahoa. Sometimes we pronounce it Mamalahoi to represent not friend but paddle. The law of the splintered paddle. And in that law, what we said was we need to protect the children, the old folks, the women, the freedom to move along our pathways. They should remain untouched. They should be able to sleep along these pathways undisturbed. There was a counter to that law. It meant that we need to respect the humanity of all people. And at that time, the right to travel was such a fundamental right. It was a form of voting for many people. If you didn't like the konehiki from one particular ahupua'a, you had the right to leave. You had the right to vote with your feet, to travel, to take off. So that law had been highly regarded. Still till today, you find police officers wearing that emblem that says Ke Kanawai Mamalahoa. The question I have is, as we look at the society today and we see the way we are treating the most down and out individuals who find no place else that they can sleep but on the sidewalks or in the parks. Even if they sleep in a car and they park it in a parking lot or down the beach, they get tagged, they get fined, and they are criminalized again. Isn't it time that we started asking ourselves, are these the times that we call for a new Ke Kanawai Mamalahoa? Ke Kanawai Mamalahoa Ho, a second law of the splintered paddle. One in which we start taking a look at the humanity of beings and not continue to allow the elevation of property rights above those of human rights. I've heard people say, but the foundation of the law is to protect property rights. My response is wrong. The foundation of the law is to protect humanity. If there is no humanity as a foundation of the law is wrong and it needs to be changed. And we need to start taking a look at those things here in Hawaii. I got buzzed by my telephone. It tells me that my time is up. I want to thank you again very much for allowing me to spend some time with you in your home or wherever you are viewing this program. I am Poka Lainui, and our sponsor is the Hawaiian National Broadcast Corporation. Ahui ho.
Kaulana nā pua o Hawaii, Kupa'a mahope o ka aina, Iki mai ka elele o ka loko i